Kia ora koutou. Nā mai haere mai ki te tēnei. Hi everybody, this is the Data and Information Committee meeting, and thank you for attending. Good morning.
Good morning.
So we'll start off. Apologies. I've got apologies from Councillor Michael Laws. Anybody else?
No, I'm happy to read it.
Seconded by Andrew Moon, Councillor Moon. All in favour?
Aye.
No against. Public forum, there's been no request to address the committee. Confirmation of the agenda. Somebody wanting to confirm the agenda?
Happy to do that for you.
Thank you. The agenda, of course, today has 3 real reports in it that we'll consider. Thank you, Carmen, who's moved that, and who's Kate's seconding it. Conflict of interest. Members are reminded of the need to stand aside from decision making when a conflict arises between their role as an elected representative and any private or other external interests they may have. If anybody has a conflict, just let us know. Confirmation of the minutes of the 9th of March Diet meeting.
Happy to read it for you.
Are you happy to do all, both of them?
I am actually, if everyone's comfortable.
And you, Kate?
Yep.
Happy to do both? Okay, so Carmen and Kate, second in the minutes. All in favour?
Aye.
Okay, that's carried. So open actions of the committee resolutions. Have any open actions? We do, I think. Okay, so yeah. Coastal monitoring program. Where are we up to with that? General manager strategy, policy and science. The science team are doing work such as coastal mapping that will provide input into the development of the coastal monitoring program. I guess that's just all in train. Should we move on? Matters for consideration. The first up is the contact recreation monitoring. This is about basically swimming areas. This report summarises ORC's contact recreation monitoring program undertaken at 29 sites in the Otago's rivers, lakes and coastal waters between December 21 and 31 March 22, so the last swimming season. And we'll welcome the report authors, Rachel Azan. Hello, welcome to you, and Tom Dyer, welcome to you, Tom, as well. And it's a noting report, and you've got it in front of you. So over to you, Rachel. I think, is that right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to do a little bit of a preamble and acknowledge the environmental monitoring team, like I always do. It's quite a big program.
Rachel?
Oh, that's
right, it's been picked up there.
You're right. Okay. Yeah, the environmental monitoring team, they visit 21 sites on a weekly basis for 16 weeks. It's all over Otago. It's quite a significant drain on their resources. This year we monitored 464 times, and 4% of those samples came back as having bacteria which were elevated beyond the acceptable state for swimming. 4%, and 2% had a caution advised on it, so really not so bad for 16 weeks of weekly samples. Generally, the high bacteria was or coincided with high river flows, as we all know. So this year we only undertook fecal source tracking when river flows were low, to give us a good indicator of what was actually happening at low flows when the river wasn't influenced by too much runoff. Otokia Creek has a permanent warning sign up there for very good reason. We did 3 lots of fecal source tracking on that creek during the summer, and every time it came back as having high avian and gull bacteria in it. And my thinking is that this is typical of those creeks that drain onto beaches anywhere.
Can we ask questions on the way along, or do we wait to?
Are you happy for questions
Yeah.
as we go?
Yep.
We go, Helen.
I was interested in that, and it says it's a combination of avian, ruminant, and human sources. In
Yes.
Tokyo Creek, do we know where the human sources are, if there are regular incidents in there? Or
I thought that might be picked up on. I wasn't ignoring it. The human source, that creek is really popular with kids, as you know. So they sit in there all day long in the summer. We did a large investigation, not this year, the year before, with DCC and Public Health South, and didn't come up with anything. So all the sewer network and the and nearby septic tanks and so on were investigated, and we didn't come up with anything. So my thinking is on this occasion, it was just because it was a hot day and there were a lot of kids in the creek. I could be wrong. I don't know. It's just speculation. We don't know.
if we did it at times when people would be cracked in the head to go swimming, would that be a better sample? I mean, should we do any of them in non-hot summer day times?
Oh,
Just to see if
we added Tokyo Creek. We did it every time because of last year. We had, I think it was not last year, the year before, we had a lot of exceedances, and we had the DCC investigation as well. So it doesn't, you're right, ruminant is a factor in there. It's an agricultural catchment, so that's not too surprising. But the human is a bugbear, and it's a difficult thing with fecal source tracking because we get the results 2 weeks after the event. It just happens like that. So even when we did the big investigative work, it had gone, so we never discovered the source. But we'll continue.
so your
looking
best
for it.
guess is incontinent children, is it?
Well, yeah, that is
I mean,
that is a possibility. Yeah, it is a possibility. We just don't know.
Shall we keep going here?
Yeah, so,
We've got Carmen
moving
and then
on.
Kate, but do you want to ask questions now?
It's just about the.
Oh, you
the
go,
switch.
Kate. No, you go
No,
there.
I just want to know, this is even though we've got a permanent sign there discouraging people to swim in it.
Yes,
Okay. I thought I must have missed something.
it's the only site.
Kids can't read.
No, it is the only site in Otago with a permanent do not swim here.
And yet they do, yeah.
And that's at 3 locations,
Yeah.
I think.
possible the incontinent ones particularly can't read.
Thank you. So then, Mr. Dye, on the first page on number 3, we talk about long-term grade.
Oh, I haven't quite finished my
Hang on, can
preamble.
we just, let's just carry on and.
Could I just finish my preamble?
Yeah.
No, you carry on.
Thank you.
Go
Okay.
and then-
So, cyanobacteria, Butcher's Dam and Lake Waihola did have blooms this year. Lake Case didn't, which was a good thing. But then we had this really unusual occurrence of Pinders Pond in Roxburgh, which had a big algae bloom outside the contact wet season. So we now know that happens. We haven't known about that before. So that's why that's going to be added to the contact ret program next year. So it'll just be checked on a weekly basis because it is quite popular. And the last thing I wanted to do was talk about the contribution of the communications team who make this run so much more smoothly. So every time we have an exceedance, they're putting alerts up on local community group pages, and they're talking to the community, and they are pointing people in the direction of LAWA and so on. So they do a good job. So now I'm happy to
I'm
take
so
that.
sorry, I'm not.
That's right, go ahead, Carmen.
Just back to Lower, is that the only place you can find that information if you wanted to go? Say we live at Middlemarch and want to go down to McKendree Bay today, and there's nothing worth getting down there and it's closed. Is that the only place you look for that if you're wanting to find that and where to look for it? As opposed, can you ring up the ORC, or is it you've got to look for that Lower website?
If you rang up ORC, you would be directed to the
Yes.
LAWA website.
Yes.
It is the one place for the whole of New Zealand, not just Otago.
Do you want to answer on that, Kate? Because then I'll carry on. But
No, I've got
You
other
sure?
questions though. You
Alright.
go carry
so
on.
on the first page, sorry about that, the page 13, you talk about a long-term grade for each recreational site alongside the work with starting. Now, I'm right, aren't I? Because I was looking at, is it Kaka Point, but a long-term grade? And there's a long-term grade, if you like, a rating system where you've got the gold stars, that it's a good site, you know, and it's, I was trying to work that out before.
Actually, I think it's worthwhile, Rachel, if you wouldn't
Could you
mind
explain
explaining
that?
the
Yes.
difference between the lower short-term ones and the long-term.
So-
You had to explain this to me the other day, Tom, so.
So every week we take a sample, and the result of that sample is shown on LAWA as a green, red, or orange. And then they take 5-year samples, and they do I think it's a 95th percentile, I can't quite remember. And then whatever the result was of that 5 years, you know,
Yes,
then that is reported as the long-term grade.
yes. Thank you. That's right. That's the first one. The other thing I was going to ask you about was, you've got, you know, you monitor lake sites, you've got that planktonic algal bloom. So plankers and floats sits the top, right? That floats. I was reading that. Am I right? I just wanted a description. I had to go back to my old sea grey water treatment notes to figure out some of this actually, and I was had me buggered. I was like, right, I'll just ask Rachel. So that's what that means when it's planktonic, the name.
The planktonic
Yeah.
means it's suspended in the water
Yes.
body,
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
so it's not growing on rocks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
benthic is growing on rocks at the bottom of the river.
Yeah.
And planktonic is its small cells suspended in the profile of the
Yes.
water body.
And the planktonic, I'm right, or I'll go back to the algal bloom. You can never, can you find that in a river or more in the lake? Because the lakes are just sitting there and there's no discharge, you know what I mean?
Planktonic is a lake algal
Yes,
bloom.
yes, but it's only that, isn't it? Like it's not river. I know it's a stupid question to ask, but I have been asked this
Oh,
before.
you can, I mean, for example, it could happen if you had a lake discharging into a river,
That's what I wondered. Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
then you could get suspended
Could happen.
planktonic.
Yeah.
But on the whole, rivers are benthic.
Yep. And then the word, the ruminant, is that to do with gut?
Yes,
It is the gut.
so that's cows.
Yes, things like that. Okay. I think that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Carmen. Kate.
Fabulous report, thank you. And really interesting stuff. Tomorrow, 1st of July, who is the relationship with that you partner with with TAs, not the Southern District Health Board? The Southern District Health Board is gone tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, who is the, is it the new health things, or who takes on that role?
That's a good question.
Okay, there's, I mean,
We'll work that one out.
Oh, no, no,
before
that's
the
fine.
beginning of the season.
well, and that's, well,
I
the
can answer.
Oh, you-
So we will stay in touch with the same people.
same people, just very different here.
Just a different organisation, different logo on their shirts. But we know we're in touch with those people for the foreseeable,
Okay,
and we'll wait and see if anything changes after that.
great. DCC do some of the monitoring that you've reported in part of this report, but that's not on the LAWA site, is it? And I'm just,
Is on the.
it is on the LAWA site. I'm looking at the wrong bit then, that's fine. Thank you. And last question, I think. I've just driven down Pitt Street and was really amazed to see blossom out at this time of the year. The season seems to be early. Is December the 6th or round about then early enough for capturing the stuff if the season seems to be earlier? I was quite intrigued that it's the first time that we do this for the swimming season. I would have thought some places possibly the swimming season starts earlier.
Yeah,
I appreciate it will cost more.
we talked to what we need to be is consistent with Southland. So we talked before the season, because it's the same, well, it was
Yeah.
the same district health board. So we don't want to have mixed messages between the two over that area. So we always talk about it, and we've always said December 1st nominally. It doesn't mean to say that it couldn't change, but it seems to work quite well.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's driven by a process and rather than driven by people swimming, potentially. Or is that because the temperatures, you won't get the negative, no, you could get the E. coli any time of the year, I presume.
Yeah, well, you
Yeah.
could, but it's temperature of the water, which clearly in Otago is a lot less than up in Northland.
I appreciate that.
School holidays,
Okay.
all that sort of
Those
stuff.
things.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting, yeah.
Thank
You,
you.
you swim, as we know, on the shortest day of the year, so.
I try and swim every day if I have a chance in the coldest lake I can find. Councillor Scott.
Oh, thank you, Rachel and Tom, for your report. I mean, the big picture is, I think what you're saying is that 96% of the time it's okay to swim at these sites, yeah?
Overall, yes.
Overall. And no, thank you. And I'm looking at page 24, well, my page 24 out of 63, paragraph, actually, I just lost it. Oh. Yeah, the tables there on page 24. And obviously, you know, you've talked about, you've given various grades of poor and fair and excellent and so for good. If I was swimming and I was at these sites, at what point should I be concerned if I was a member of the community there, or should I not be concerned?
In what way? I'm not quite with you. What do you mean?
Yeah, well, from a governance perspective, then, like on a particular day, I could look at the Lawa site and it says it's fine to swim and that's great. I mean, should I be satisfied from a governance perspective that everything's okay, or not?
I think the only thing we can do here, if you're talking about your choice whether to go swimming, is to move.
Well, yeah, not necessarily my choice to go swimming, but just like from a governance perspective, what's their benchmark? Like, is this the way? Is this type of numbers the same every year? I don't know if you put comparatives through, or are things getting better? Are things getting worse? Is everything okay? What conclusion should I come to?
I think when I've presented these reports before, I've gone into quite some detail about how this programme and the results emanating from this programme are really dependable on rainfall, which is why we pushed that message so hard with Lawa, like don't swim after 24 hours. So you can't really compare one season to another, purely because one season might be really terrible summer and rain the whole time and you're going to get elevated bacterial results, and the next summer might be beautiful and you just don't. So that is a tricky thing. And I think the example I gave you with Lake Wakatipu, where it's a 5-year series of results, and we have a couple of high results early on, 3 years ago, that has pushed that site into the poor long-term grade. But quite clearly, when you look at it, when you look at the results, on the whole, it's absolutely excellent, as it should be. So it's that sort of thing. We just, if it's raining, just keep out of the water for 24 hours. And I think that's the only thing we can say about this programme. So from a governance perspective, I don't think there's very little that we can do, because we cannot draw comparisons between one season and the next.
Yeah. Okay. But have I got this right though? You're taking the sampling when it's generally low flows?
No, we take them every week. Yeah.
You take regardless of whether it's raining or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Wouldn't sound so.
Okay, thank you.
I've got Hilary, then Gretchen, and then Kate. Thank you very much. Go, Hilary.
I can appreciate why today might be, the best advice is don't go swimming after rain and things, and that generally they're excellent, and long term, what you've just described in answer to Brian's question. I've got a slightly different question which hangs on around the same thing though. They'll be putting out in the next 3 months in particular things in the paper about how governance individually probably thinks that they're looking after our environment, and they'll focus, I presume, on the water, and people will ask rude questions about, are we looking after the water? And if so, is it improving or is it getting worse? And we aren't going to be able to usefully answer that question by saying, well, it all depends on when you sample it, because that's just not going to work. And if somebody new came onto the council and said, okay, I just want to improve the water, then we would probably try and do I know this sounds a long question, but we would probably try and do some sort of KPI which said, how can we tell what it's like, such as that we can say, I have achieved something over the next 3 years or 5 years, or that it's getting better, or that we can reassure the minister that we're doing good things or whatever. What would we put in a system, considering that you're saying we can't compare 1 year with the last and things? What would we put in there that we can say, we have done something, or we have failed to do something that we could have done, that would show the results of what we'd be trying to do?
Right. So this program doesn't do that, clearly. What does do that is our long-term safe environment monitoring. So that is the report that I presented earlier in the year. And that goes back over 20 years. And you have 20-year trends, you have 10-year trends. That is the report that everybody should be looking at for improving water quality or not, as the case may be.
And if we had a KPI, we'd be comparing it in with that data. We'd be saying the KPI is with it in 5 years' time, we can see these figures improving. And that would be the figures we'd be seeing improving if we
With a
were
long-term
achieving
safe
something.
environment monitoring. This program is to inform purely the general public about the state of water quality on a weekly basis, to inform them whether, whether it's safe for swimming or not. So it's trying to educate the public on how to pick whether.
Thank you. That's really helpful, because that clarifies.
Good.
Thank you. Gretchen?
Yes, policy thing, isn't it? But our council did set ourselves swimmability targets as well a while ago. I don't know whether actually those are superseded or not by MPSFM changes, but we did set ourselves a date, didn't we, when we have all our rivers swimmable? Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that was quite ambitious. Anyway, my question is around the figure 2, and which outlines what the procedure is. So the procedure was agreed by the organisations. So we've got a procedure there which has our monitoring and what we do. And also we have signs up and we tell people, please check LAWA. My question is that the only procedure that we have? Or you get these reports and you think to yourself, that's good, this is the data. What next? What's the use of this? We know the site is good or bad. What happens next? We get bad results 1 week, and it's retrospective, obviously, isn't it? So that's the problem. But we're telling people they just have a sign up all the time that says check LAWA. Do we do something else? Like we've got a relationship with Southern District Health, Public Health, South, whatever. Also, the TAs who have health responsibilities. I'm wondering whether this really is the procedure or whether there's something that's missing there that we also do.
This is a very shortened version of the procedures that we have. So every time a result is elevated, we contact the relevant TA and the Southern District Health Board, as well as the comms team have a network of key people in each catchment, and they communicate with those people as well.
I think we need what should probably be in there, because that's a really important part of our procedure.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the paper, I mentioned that we did work closely with the TAs and the Southern District Health Board, but I just didn't put the whole procedure in there because it's quite a piece. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's good. It's good that we still do that. We're not just relying on a sign up.
Oh,
Please do this yourself. Yeah.
Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, mine sort of follows that other line, but a report is one thing, and I appreciate that this is a daily thing and therefore less something that you can react to. But I do think that there's a trend in some of these sites that now that we've got so many catchment groups going, that it would be good to send it to those people saying there's no action to be taken necessarily, but we think you'll find this interesting. And this is about us getting our information out in different ways other than just putting it on the website. They're fantastic reports, and the more that sometimes that some people see these, they'll think, we can do better here. I think every community I've been to wants to have swimming water. It's a litmus test of of it. There are some areas, and they're intriguing, and certainly having gull and avian issues are really difficult to manage. But I think there are catchment groups out there, especially ones that are getting results at a ruminant. I think they would like to know about them. And so I'm just wondering, I know that we can't do anything from this meeting, but I'm just wondering what is the process for sharing this in a constructive way?
Can I just take that action? Sorry, that's me. To have a chat with the comms team, and we can talk about the best way to do that with all the catchment groups, and whether it's a presentation to the Otago catchments community or something else on this report. So I'm happy to take that.
Thank you.
I think we actually have this issue with almost everything that comes
Indeed.
out of data and information. And we have discussed this before, and it's something that we might want to actually put some focus on at some point, is to actually find a way to make these reports easily accessible to the public. I don't know about the rest of you, but I get quite a few requests of where people say, oh, I know that you discussed this at some point, but I can't find it anywhere on your website. And then I dig through the agendas and send it to them, which is not ideal. There's got to be easier ways, and there's work to be done around that. Really.
Is it possible to deal with that by, when we've got these sorts of reports, having something at the bottom of the report saying something like the take-home message is, and then what?
Well, you risk oversimplification, and I think that becomes a comms issue and not ours.
But if that's the comms message that can go out, that if that's what we would expect to come out of this meeting. I mean, I'm not, the comms people could look and say, this is what you seem to be saying, and so it comes to us with a sort of a pre-prepared, this is what we're saying, this is what.
I think that's something you can raise at a communications governance meeting type of thing. Yeah. Yeah, because this is about receiving these reports. We're not making decisions, or we can recommend on to another committee if we want to, but really
No, but we can note a report that says that in it, is what I'm saying, which would deal with that if we knew in advance what it was that we were thinking that the take-home thing was. I'm just saying that could stops us having to send it off to another committee, and it means that people have thought in advance about what it is that we would want to communicate with the public from whatever it is. I'm just saying that's one way through that is quite an efficient way through.
We can factor that thinking into the action that Anita took before, and have a look at how we might display these reports in the future in a way that works for both this committee and the community.
Or that the comms can just pick up or whatever.
Yeah, I think there is a wider question around all these reports, and Kate, you've brought it up before, and so Brian, one day we will look at this, I think. Michael Deacon.
Yeah, I think, thanks Alexa. Kate's suggestion is an excellent one. And it could, to make it clean and simple, why don't, when it comes to the recommendation on page 14, that this committee notes the report and asks that it be forwarded to all relevant catchment groups.
Can we do that? Yeah, sounds good. That sounds really good. Come.
I was just happy to move this.
Can I just ask one question?
You want to just go? Oh, sorry, Gary.
No, cool. There's on the table on page, sorry, I was going to.
24?
Yeah, I think it was 24. The one that had the difference between LAWA and
That's right.
MPSFM. And so we've got quite a very noticeable difference between the gradings that come from LAWA versus the gradings that we have under MPSFM. And so for a lot of the sites, if you were a full unsuspecting parent sending your child off to swim in a river, you would probably be sending them to the pool for what LAWA is saying versus what we see under the MPSFM. And then when you look at percentages alongside some of them, they are quite small. So is there, I mean, we're reporting under, because this is data information, so we are showing those grades. And yet, so when council, when this moves on to what we then use for decision making, for what we're reporting on. What weighting does the LAWA gradings have versus the MPSFM gradings? Because, you know, we will have, I mean, there's a many here opinion piece in the paper today about water quality. When these groups pick up on, for any river, you know, the Taieri is graded here, there's, where does LAWA sit versus MPSFM?
That's a really good question, actually, because those two columns at the end of the table, so the LAWA one is based on the 5 years, and the MPSFM is just this season's results, and they are clearly very different. What weight? I don't know, but the LAWA, we're pointing people to LAWA all the time, so we can't dismiss it. This is what it is, and it's a 95th percentile. So clearly very difficult to meet if you're sampling in all weathers. Yeah, I just showed the two for exactly that reason and didn't quite know what to do with it, quite honestly. They're different beasts because one's 5 years and one's 1 year. And again, next year, if we have a rainy season, then you can imagine that the MPSFM grade will be very different.
The key thing is that every time we give you science, we'll give you the best available information, and that might be 2 data sets, or it might be, you know, the longest term or the most reflective. So I don't think it's a weighting issue. It's about what gives us the best picture. And this is a really good picture because it's showing you actually that two different systems of recognizing data show you quite different outputs. And so always the intention is to give you the best available information, whatever that might be.
Thanks, Anita. Did you finish there? I'm going to Brian Scott, then come back to you. Okay, Brian Scott and then Carmen. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. This is really interesting, and I've previously, you know, brought up the issue of how do we actually communicate this information, because if it's not clear in the report, it's difficult to communicate. But I think, you know, just building on what Kate raised and what Michael Decker raised in terms of passing this on to catchment groups, my question to Rachel is really the key thing for the catchment groups, isn't it the state of the environment? The state of the environment will give us quite clear pictures for all our rivers, whereas what we're looking at here today is various swimming sites that we've got a service for to provide feedback, you know, to give some type of direction whether you should swim on a particular day. It's the state of the environment information and data that should be forwarded to catchment groups. Is that correct, Rachel?
They could have whatever they want.
Yeah.
They can have the state of environment report, they can have this report, it's all information.
Yeah, it's all information, but let's just clarify what the information is. And that the state of the environment is, as you said, it's long-term, scientific, robust data on the water quality of our rivers, streams, and so forth. Whereas the LAWA one is not as comprehensive. It's not the same data set. It's not over the same time period. And it's, from what you're saying, it's able to be influenced depending on rainfall.
I think there's two really important aspects to this data. One is that you've got the state of environment long-term data set that is important for decision-making and thinking about how
exactly
might adjust their behaviours or their activities in a given catchment over time. However, in saying that, the LAWA grading and the contact rec information is also important because it gives the catchment groups a sense of how the rivers are behaving in terms of a swimmability,
cool.
in terms of swimmability throughout the year. And we would just need to be really clear that the best overall data set for thinking about long-term trends and long-term change in a catchment's water quality is the state of environment work. And that a supplementary data set for people to think about how that's manifesting in the community, how swimmable a place might be from month to month, week to week over a summer period. It's this data set. And I think it's just really important that we are clear and articulate around what the two are for.
And exactly what you've just said, if you do forward this information, and I hope you do. And I hope that exactly what you've just said accompanies it. Thank you.
I think we're getting somewhere in our understanding of your reports, you two, which is awesome. Thank you. I'm going first to Carmen.
No, go to Gary first. I'll
Okay,
move it,
Gary.
but I want to.
Carmen, Kate, is that going to be okay?
Yeah, sorry, it was just one more question we had to ask it before. You started it in your preamble, you made the comment that the monitoring for this was it sounded like a burden or is this not business as usual?
It is business as usual. It's just a big program, that's all.
It was just a comment you made that it sounded like it was an added drain on resources or.
I can clarify that. In the summer period is very busy for the environmental monitoring team. A lot of our programs are at their most intense during that time, and this is just one of those programs. That is business as usual. You're right. It's resource, and we get the work done. But that summer period, as Rachel was acknowledging, is a busy period for those staff in particular.
So are we under-resourced or are we?
No, we weren't saying that. We're just saying that it is a busy period and it keeps everyone on their toes. It's as simple as that.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
Carmen, then Kate.
I was just going to move this.
Oh, you're trying to move it. Okay.
Yes.
He's moved it already.
Has he, do you have a seconder?
No, Michael moved it.
Michael moved. Carmen seconds. Kate, did you have another question
What was the
before I
question?
take that?
Yeah, it was because of what Brian said, and actually a question just from Gary, and I just want to check something. So swimmability, as I said, is a litmus test. If people go up to a community and find that they can't swim, they can get frustrated and blame, as they often do, the farmers. What is really interesting about this report is a lot of the results of where you've done that testing, it isn't about farming at all. But it also gives a whole lot of background information that people can talk about. And I think the more that people can talk about these and explain them, the better. But it does give a reason for farmers to realise, and I think that DNA stuff is fantastic, and if eDNA can be worked out better, it's going to be a really wonderful tool for us to be giving a much better message about why. It's the why these are low values that can be really important for how land is managed. So that was that. But the cost of this and the resourcing, and it's something that I know I've talked about a lot, I would hope that when we set the budgets that we are looking at the best and most efficient way of delivering some of the science. And some of the citizen science could be at least complementing this, I would have thought, once we can get that up and running.
Is that a question?
But it is a question, because is there another way of delivering some of this stuff? I know it has to be on certain days and everything like that, but does it have to be done by one team, or, you know, people doing water sampling for other reasons all over the place?
So some programs can be assessed for the potential for citizen science and all of that sort of thing. This is probably not one of them,
Okay.
and that you've got a very regimented timeframe for taking samples, and it all has to be done it all has to be done on the same day. If we have 4 people around the region all attacking this program in the same day, and we do as much as possible link programs for efficiency and all of that sort of stuff. But the other aspect of this is that those samples need to be taken in a way that provides some quality assurance. That means that you can be really confident in the results, and that requires a level of expertise and training that we provide. But there are other programs, you're right, that could be assessed for citizen science, and we'll continue to do that. I've got an action to do that.
And just saying, in addition to that, we did put actions in progress for this year, not for the actual sampling, but in the eventuality, particularly around cyanobacteria, in the eventuality that there was a bloom, we had contracts in place for external providers to put up signs, because that's a tricky thing, because that interferes with the program for environmental monitoring at a particularly busy time of year. So that was dealt with, and we also hired students.
I love it. I love it. So I just want to explain, can I just, the reason I'm raising that is that there's a whole lot of catchment groups actually getting people qualified in order to do their own sampling. And this would give an efficiency, give us more potential for doing this stuff more regularly or better or wider, without necessarily adding costs, and give them efficiencies as catchment groups.
Okay, Michael, are you ready to move this?
Good idea. I'm
With
glad
its change?
I do formally move, as I suggested before, that this be noted and forwarded
Forwarded
to
to
all
all
relevant
relevant
catchment groups.
catchments, yeah.
But if you'll let me, I just want to say that I don't want to drop a bomb on anybody, particularly on Tom or Rachel's head. So if we send this out, and I'm a member of a catchment group which happens to include the shallows at Lake Hayes or the beach at Frankton or the Queenstown Bay. And I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, yep, it's excellent according to the NPSFM measurements, but it's poor against Lawa. What the hell? What are you sending me this for? How do we actually explain that to an enthusiastic layperson?
I think if the resolution were to say forward, we would make an effort to wrap some perspective around those kind of
It's the
matters.
wrapping I'm interested in.
Yeah, and whether that's forwarding some material on or presenting, there's a whole bunch of different ways we can handle that. But I think it's best that we take this away and think about how we deliver that action.
Yeah, good. As long as that happens, then I'm very happy to proceed just as you wanted.
I guess this reinforces the point about the action I undertook earlier, which was to have the conversation with the comms team, because I think they're best placed to tell us the best way to wrap the information and to get about how it goes and when it goes, rather than a report. If you want a report to go out as it is, we can do a little bit more, but that would be my preference, is that we have that conversation with the comms team.
It would be my preference too, rather than, as you have said, Michael, quite eloquently, so I think that we
Whichever way.
shows, can we leave this with staff to do that and just and simply take the note?
Yes, we can. I was trying to
said.
avoid forwarding onto another committee and having the whole
Yeah,
discussion.
And I think Anita is really
No,
clear
That
on,
suggestion is really good.
and Tom on where we want to go. Everybody okay with that? Okay, so let's put the motion as it stands. And seconded by Carmen. Anything to say?
Yes, may I say through the chair, I'm not sure if we've done this, but Tom, you received a wonderful award not long ago. And I think that we have been really remiss here in not acknowledging you. I know how hard it is to be in that space, and I congratulate you, your team as well, Ms. Ozanne, and all of you people, because you all work together, but it's a very big achievement for you, and I think we need to acknowledge it. Well done.
Thank you, Carmen, for bringing that up. Any further discussion, anyone? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? No. Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you very much, Tom, and congratulations. Really good. Thanks, Carmen. We'll move on now to the Lake Snow report, which is going to update this committee on lake snow related research, presents monitoring data and outlines future research to best manage and mitigate algal growth in the Otago lakes. And this is a really, it's close to the hearts of anyone that's in the Great Lakes regions. So welcome to Hugo, of course, that's right. How are you? Met you several times. Hugo Borges and Tom, you stay with us. That's great. And yeah, over to you.
I'm good, thank you. So the intention of this paper was just to summarize what are the recent research and findings on Lindavia, which is the Lindavia intermedia, which is the species that produce lake snow and lake snow research in both Otago and New Zealand. So most of the research program that happened, we've been involved with, which is good, especially the initial research when we wanted to find out what the species was, where it came from, and what the problem was for us here. So So that was done back 2016, 2017. And then there was some more research that carried on with the University of Otago, Land Care Research, and more recently NIWA. So I think it was a great opportunity to show you what's happening in that space. Although, yeah, it's been probably around 5-6 years now that we've been discussing this issue in Otago. The research that's out there is still very, very limited, and we still don't understand what Lake No is and what causes it, what the triggers are, and so many more questions about it. So this is like a good summary on where we are at with it. I also decided to present some of the monitoring data that we've been doing in the last 5 years. We monitor 5 lakes in the region out of the 8 lakes that we have in our State of the Environment program. And in 4 of those 5 lakes that we monitor, we have Lake Snow present, and we have Lindavia Intermediate present in the 5 of them, but it doesn't produce Lake Snow, which is the Lake Hayes case. We do have Lake Snow spread in other lakes in the region, but it's not part of the State of the Environment monitoring program, but we know when we acknowledge other lakes as well. And also I just want to discuss the importance in this paper of further studies and how we can, if you want to better manage and if you're concerned about this issue in our region, like what we should be doing in order to understand better and maybe have a management strategy in place for Lake Snow. So that's the overall intent of the paper.
I'm going to come to you in a minute, Kate. I'm just wondering about your thoughts on the research project led by Dr. Mark Schellenberg that was turned down for funding at this point. What do you think the next steps are for that?
Yeah, I think that I was very upset because we were part of it. We were supporting, we were investing resources in it. And all the SOE network that we have, we are keen to make it available to them, and because we have the same interest. We want to understand what's going on, you know, and hopefully improve the issues that we have. So I was upset, you know, and I feel like we have lakes that are very important nationally and unique when we compare internationally as well. So it's very upsetting that we still don't get funding to better understand those lakes because they are poorly studied, you know. So I really feel like it would be great to you know, finding ways to support a proposal like that, you know, to happen in our region, and maybe partner with other regional councils, you know, or use our influences with central government, you know, like to bring attention to the issue. But I really feel like it's a great opportunity when we have very great scientists, and that proposal managed to bring together international experts, you know, in lake ecology. So we have scientists keen and available to study our region. They just don't have funding, you know. So I think it would be very important to make sure that we can do our best to make things happen. So that's my view of it.
Thanks for that, Hugo. And it is marvelous to see us working with those scientists at the very least. Tom, did you have something to add before I go to questions?
No, I don't.
Okay, so Kate, then Gretchen.
Thank you. 2 parts to this, but I want to say really well, I'm no scientist, and I think I gleaned most of the stuff that I was meant to glean out of this. So well written. Thank you. The question I have is exactly the same on the same line as Alexa's, and that is that what I couldn't tell is what the quantum was required. We often go for scientific funds, but there are people who are prepared to invest in this in other ways. And there's some very generous people who are interested. It does seem odd that often we have to get a real problem to get the government to invest in remediating something that could have, with better science, perhaps been solved. But anyway, how much was the application for?
Yeah, so this funding actually, they tried to make it as concise as possible and manageable, so we wouldn't have like a massive scale project. So they've done over 3 years, around $1 million per year. And that project involved many different aspects of the lake that we are all interested in, not only lake snow, but it had things like climate change, modeling, nutrient understanding of those lakes, and ways of improving monitoring of those lakes, how to use new technology, to improve the way that we monitor lakes. Understanding the trophic level, like how that network works in the lake, like from fish to phytoplankton, and things that we just don't understand fully in those big lakes. And understanding the hydrodynamics of those lakes are very important too, like how the currents affect everything, like how the structure of the water column is affecting what's living in it, understanding what the zooplankton, which are the little animals like floating in the water, are affecting the phytoplankton, which includes lake snow and other organisms. So there are a few hints out there that things are changing, like the phytoplankton community, which is the algae community. There is a transition now because lake snow, which was an invasive species, was introduced. So you don't see the same structure anymore, but like we don't actually have well documented results for that because we don't really understand. Do that.
So that was, they need $1 million, and the contribution
3 million over the
3
3
million,
years.
$1 million a year, sorry, for 3 years. I'm interested in understanding how much of that had already been raised, or that was the grant, and the others was all in kind from the ORC, the university, and any other organisations?
Yeah, so there were people involved in Australia. I think the Griffith University. There are scientists from Switzerland. I can't remember the agencies at the moment, but there are people from Switzerland and Germany as well. And there are a lot of in-kind investment, and including like a lot of the work here. 3 million was like what we can do, what we have, and then make the best of it. But like all the investment that we are making on like getting lake buoys to those lakes, which are, it's a lot of money. If they had to pay for those things, would add a lot of money, but they're going to be reliant if that thing go ahead on that data set, in order to do this study. And there's a lot, there's much more money involved than the 3 million. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And it's really good to see that you're still going to be working on Gretchen, and then Brian, and then Kevin. Go Gretchen, and then Michael.
Yeah, thanks for gathering all this information together. It's really useful and important. As you said, there's been some changes that are going on in our deep lakes. Figure 5 there, first of all, which is the Schellenberg collected data on the amount of chlorophyll that's in the lakes, and it says that there is a trend of increasing chlorophyll. So yeah, we can see that something's going on. First of all, is that a significant trend? So something that's really happening, and how concerned should we be about that? So that's the first thing. And then I think from this report and a number of other avenues, talking to people, a lot of community interest and projects going on in this area. Yeah, the question obviously is what to do from here. And you talked about, and the report talks about looking for other avenues for funding, because this is really important research, you've said to us in the report. Yeah, I won't go into whether I agree, because I'd like to talk about that later, but I do agree. And I'm thinking what to do from here. You said maybe we need a strategy for research, but actually maybe we need a strategy for our deep lakes that's even broader than research, which would be unplanned for. But it seems as though the evidence is mounting towards that, and has been for some time. We need to put more focused attention on this, pulling together what you've said to us. So yeah, you've mentioned a strategy. Do we need a strategy from here? does it need to be broader than just research, perhaps, although this paper's on research? Where to from here? Because I think we're going to need to decide with this paper, not to just note it today, what we're collectively going to do in recommendations. So if you can help us with what you mentioned about strategy or research from here, and knowing that it might not be this coming year because we've already got an LTP we've just approved, but hey, give us your thoughts, that'll be good. But how concerned do we need to be too?
Sure. So talking about figure 5, this is the analysis of our data set that we collect as part of our State of the Environment program. And if we go back to Rachel's and look at water quality in those lakes, Wakatipu and Hawea, it's going to be, according to the NPSFM, within the A band, all green, beautiful, nice water quality, very low in nutrients, low chlorophyll as well. When we compare across the country, it's probably one of the best results. However, when we go and look in depth, at the data set, and you see that here as an example, from 2017, if you look at the orange dots as an example, which is Wanaka, from 2017, you've got your highest around 1. And then in 2021, you've got your highest just above 2. So that's like 100% increase, So, and then when you look at the regression lines, you see that there is an upward trend in all of them. So it means that it's increasing. It's within the A band, still very good quality, but we can see that there is something wrong happening. Should we're gonna wait, a bit more, and then I have a 5-year data set here, and then we're gonna see what's happening there. But when do we act? What do you do? Or you just sit and watch, that it's going up, and then you don't do anything, So I actually think it's alarming, you see those very good pristine water quality, and then we are still a bit limited the way we monitor those lakes, because a lot of the chemical lab analysis, you get a lot of below detection limit. So it could be that what's below detection limit, it's increasing, but we don't know, we can't guarantee because our technology is not there for that yet, So yeah, so it's very important just to, act with caution, I think, and also be proactive in a way that we are protecting those lakes. So I think that's my message when I saw those results happening. And in regards to the strategy, we are going through a process of a strategy for the lakes, right? So we engaged, we've had a tender, we engaged a company, and we're gonna get there. And it will be more, like when I was commenting, I was talking about Lake Snow specifically. So because what I've heard when I was told about that I had to write this paper, that the concern is what we're going to do, things are happening, people are being affected by Lake Snow in the region, but there is no management strategy, there's nothing happening in that space, so there is a need for that. But of course, for the deep lakes, there is a bigger need of what are the best ways to manage those lakes and how to achieve great things in that space. And I think we are a big part of the picture, not only us, but I think we are a big part of the picture. Yes.
Thank you. Before I go to Brian, I'm just going to come to you. You made a comment there, Hugo, and I didn't get its context correct, and I'd hate to get it wrong. Was you said it's alarming? Was that alarm around the chlorophyll levels rising?
Yeah, just see that, you see that those lakes that always have very low chlorophyll numbers. Now it's increasing, so we don't want to mess up with those lakes. You don't want to, and those species that are happening right now, they are not harmful to humans now, but it could become, it could be that we're going to have another shift in community and cyanobacteria will be a problem. And imagine how disastrous this would be, having toxic cyanobacteria blooming in those lakes. And we know that if we have enough nutrients in there, we have the conditions, because we have warm summers, we have shallow bays in some of those lakes, we have areas that it could be amazing and for cyanobacteria to thrive. So we just have to make sure that we'll never get there, because fixing will cost a lot more money. And if we ever achieve any fixing, because it's the environment, we can invest and try, but it's a natural environment, so we never know the outcome really 100%.
And there's your key message: remediation is much more expensive
Always.
than fixing the problem.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian, and then Kevin, and then Michael.
Cool. First point, Hugo, thank you and everybody that's involved with it for bringing this to our attention, and the words that you've used. So there's no mistaking your concern. The second point, just so it's clear in my mind, I've looked at this time series, chlorophyll time series, and it talks about the plankton biomass. How does that relate to Lake Snow? Is the Lake Snow the plankton biomass? Can you just turn the relationships between those scientific words and Lake Snow?
Yeah, so phytoplankton, it's algae. It's a scientific term for algae. And chlorophyll, it's a pigment that's only found in algae. So when you're measuring chlorophyll, it's a proxy for all the algae, all the algae in the lake, which includes the diatom that we are talking about, Lindavia. So, but it's not only Lindavia that's present there. We have picocyanobacteria in the lake, we have other diatoms, we have all sorts of algae growing in the lake.
Okay, so you've encapsulated Lake Snow in this. No, thank you.
Yeah.
And my final question is that we've been approached by Don Robinson in Central Otago about a potential proposal to set up an expert group on the Great Lakes. I hope I'm not talking out of school here, but are you aligned, with that type of thinking? Are they also potentially thinking about Lake Snow? Have you had any interaction with some of these people? Any comments? I mean, it's a funny question, but are you all on the same page?
The science team haven't seen that correspondence, so I will forward it on to Tom to have a look at. But there are lots of pieces of work going in the lake space across the land and freshwater work and the lake strategy. So we just need to make sure they all connect up.
Yeah, cool. Maybe that's the answer to my question is that when we consider that request or email or whatever, that we have some insight from staff about, potential alignment and thinking and solutions. It'd be nice if we're all on the same page. Thank you.
If I may just add to what Anita said, yesterday I've had a meeting with the Guardians of Lake Wanaka and John. And I went there to present the latest results that we've been monitoring, and just to have an open discussion and conversation about issues that in those lakes. And he did send me an email today, I think, and included the deep water program that I think he had been working on. I haven't looked at it yet, but and I've told him that I'm very keen and open to, keep these open channel between us and hopefully work closely together, achieving what the community wants to achieve. But yeah, I haven't read anything yet.
Cool. That's music to my ears. Thank you.
No worries.
Mine too. Thank you, Hugo. Kevin.
Yeah, Hugo, Tom, thanks for the report. Just on the funding side of thing, when I look at it, it appears as this bug's come from North America, the most likely source of it, and I think actually Didimo arrived the same way from North America. And we look at the map that you have on page 33, which shows where the instances of it are scattered right throughout the country. To me, that therein lies the actual reality of who should be looking. This is a central government issue. This is not just a regional council issue. This is central government that should be they've let it in because of poor biosecurity at the gateway. So it's come in, it's now in here, and it's infested right throughout the country. So what other and Schellenberg and Co are trying to do a really good job and get something going to actually get this issue sorted. But what money has, or have we approached, or have they approached ECAN, Tasman, Southland, Hawke's Bay, Manawatu, and indeed central government? Because all those regional councils, it's a problem there anyway. So it also.
Rachel just helpfully told me that Sarah Gardner actually took this to central government and got no buy-in at all. So
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, and that, I think this is stated on my last paragraph on my final considerations. But yeah, so 3 years ago, I think we've had workshops with scientists, and they defined, what research should be done, like in order to better understand. And there were some priorities, and we attacked some of them, but the other ones, which required a bit more money and more time, was kind of like on hold because it needed funding. And I think this council decided that it was a national problem, and because of the cost as well, it would be relevant to bring to the attention to the central government. And there was nothing that came back from it. But just one thing that I'd like to clarify in your comments when you were talking about this map, it's important to highlight here that this is the presence of Lindavia. So Lindavia is a species that can produce lake snow, but that's not where lake snow is spread all around. Lake snow, it's our problem here in Otago, and even internationally, you find Lindavia in other lakes, but you don't find the lake snow problem. So more recently, there are a few other lakes that are having problems with lake snow in Canterbury and also in Nelson. So probably now there is probably more interest as well of like studying a bit more and saying that those councils, they do have invested some money through the same scientists, which is Mark Schellenberg and Phil Novis in land care. And they've done some projects, but of course the budgets are also limited. So I think it could be another opportunity, like to sit at governance level, to sit around the table with other councils and trying to gather interest as well and join forces. And that's what I mentioned earlier as well. And the funding that the proposal was submitted to the MB funding, which is, from my understanding, a central government funding. So that would be then from the best interest, like for them to fund these if that's the concern that they're having from there, so I don't know, I can speak for them why they didn't go through, but yeah, but for me, it's a sign that they're still not super interested, with that problem.
Thanks, Hugo. Yeah, we get that picture.
And can I just a subsequent question to that?
But I'm really conscious of time. We've got 20 minutes and another paper, so please just keep it.
That's good. I'll work through lunchtime. I'm quite happy to do that. Hugo, so what's spreading this? What's spreading it? Have we come to the conclusion? So all of a sudden, it's coming in these other lakes. So what's spreading it?
Well, this study that I've taken this map from did some modeling, to find out. And I think mostly is road access, and then you had the highest rate of finding Lindavia in the lakes that had road access. So it's us spreading it, and probably other animals in other ways as well of spreading. But I think the paper talked that the main vector is.
Yeah, just confirm. Thank you. Thanks. Very good report. Thank you, Chair, for your indulgence.
Thank you, Kevin. I've got two more questions, and please, if we can just keep as concise as we can, Michael, and then Hilary.
Yeah, thanks, Alexa. Congratulations, Hugo, on top-rate paper. As Kate says, this amongst the scientific papers we've had over the years, this is outstanding. I was going to explore the same avenue that Kevin has brought up and say that surely the Endeavour Fund people at MB would be more inclined to fund such a program if we stopped seeing it as an Otago issue and worked with the people responsible for Te Anau, for Tekapo, for Hawea, for Ohau and Pukaki and so on. And you've answered that, I think, so I'll stop there. I won't waste committees in time, but I am really impressed with the work that you're doing. And I'm sure Gavin Palmer is too, because Gavin put a great deal of thought and worry into this when he was in the position that others are in now. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello.
Can we, and I'm not sure that this is the question for you gentlemen, can we, as well as noting the paper, ask that our chair and deputy chair look at how we can communicate with others who have the same problem and with central government about this, with a view to sending a letter such as that we can publicly put it out there, so as if the government wants to say, no, we're not interested in doing anything, they need to publicly do that as well. Let's actually get in there and get some, not just have our people ask a sort of nameless government, a lot of people who say, oh no, it's not on our radar or something. Let's actually get in amongst this and charge Andrew and Kevin with the responsibility of
I'll second that.
What do you think?
Communicating.
I was going to say, yeah, great idea. There's two avenues. One is the South Island Regional Councils, of which we get together from time to time, every couple of months, and then there's obviously the forum for regional councils nationally as well. So yeah, more than happy to follow.
But if you can get in touch with them and get them at moving with either a joint approach or just with us.
So can we note the report and request that the CE and chair pick up this matter and follow it through with relevant organisations?
Also move.
Yeah.
Okay, moved by Michael, seconded by. Oh, sorry, you got.
No, I thought she'd already moved that. when she
No,
said
that's
that.
fine.
You can
second it.
And
I just
seconded
wanted
by
to-
Kate. Any further discussion? Good.
Who's the minister responsible for MB?
Can't remember.
But it could be Doc as
It
well.
doesn't need to be
They've got
me, MB, it could be the Minister for the
I mean,
Environment.
it'll go
And the-
through probably regional chairs and things before.
They can figure out who them.
Biosecurity.
I wanted to say that I support that, but I think that some of the problem of why we perhaps wouldn't be successful could be how difficult that lake snow is to deal with. And sometimes when we raise the matter as a council, they seem to think that we're going to try and get rid of, we're aiming to get rid of this thing, which is impossible because it's, a very, well, it's microscopic. It's encased in glass. Well, the silica, it's nearly impossible to deal to without ruining your whole rest of your
And it comes and goes
ecosystem.
madly too, doesn't it?
Yes, so that is not likely in what we're aiming to do. But as you said yourself, Councillor Forbes, indicators that are mounting up together of our changing deep water environments, which are pristine at this point and absolutely hugely valuable to our nation, to our identity. If we lost this and we've gone to a tipping point, that is hugely embarrassing to the entire nation. So it's a bigger issue than just the lake snow here that we're talking about. We've got Rotorua has had a massive amount of investment into it because it's got to the point of tipping. We don't want to get to that point. So we'd like to spend less money now to ensure that we never do. And this is just part of it. So I think going and saying, hey, look, we're trying to deal with lake snow and Otago isn't an issue. We do need investment into this, and it's an indicator of potentially other issues as well. So yeah, I think how you approach that's important. Thanks.
Well, I think that this comes down to, we've already got budgeted a Lakes Otago, an Otago Lakes strategy. So that's underway. And we may want to consider into the next long-term planning process, a specific deep water lake strategy as well. But we start where we are, and lake snow is certainly part of it. And we need to look at all these different research programs and keep them happening and stay committed to that, and commit ourselves generally to the ongoing health and well-being of our Great Lakes, and realizing that their value to their intrinsic value and their value to our lifestyles are massive. Something like that. But anyway, so can I please put that motion, or did the move from anybody? The motion, yes,
the
please go.
motion, please. So initially, I wrote down from Councillor Calvert that the committee requests the chair and deputy chair, and then it was changed to chair and chief executive.
Oh, was it, how did you want
to
that?
follow up with other councils with similar issues? I just want to confirm.
Yeah, chair, whatever, chair and CE is fine.
What's going to be best there?
Well, the South Island Forum includes the deputy,
Okay.
so have the deputy there as well, and the other forum is so include
request
the three of us.
request
three.
the chair, deputy chair, and chief executive to
Yep.
follow up with other councils with similar issues.
And with a view to contacting government and requesting help with the lake snow problem, since it's a national issue.
It's not actually, yeah.
That's a lot of places.
It's more
No.
than just us.
The diatoms and the Lindavia might be a national issue, but lake snow is specific to us, to
No.
Canterbury South, is that correct?
Well, Canterbury, us and Nelson, somebody
Yeah,
just said,
that's
so
right.
that's national from our point of view.
Might not
Mainland.
be from the Auckland point of view, but there we go. Okay,
Okay.
requesting help with the lake snow problem. So would you like to read that up or put it up so that everyone can see
Sure.
it? Maybe, please. Do we need any, just to complicate things, and I know we're in a hurry, do we need to have anything in there to elevate the needs of the Great Lakes in some way? No harm, is there? Richard?
Yeah, I think that might be the strategy. So the timing for lining our ducks up might be another year away on that. But in the background, we've heard that a whole lot of work's going on, and we're continuing to get our ducks really well lined up, both in research and other avenues is what we've heard, I think. But
Yeah, and Dr. Schellenberg is also pursuing other farming opportunities as well. And we'll continue to support that proposal in its current form.
So leaving it there is good for now?
Yep.
Okay, so I move a second, are happy? Okay. So
And who
move
was the second,
councillor, I think we had Deeker and Wilson. So moved councillor Deeker, was it?
I thought that was council.
Oh, councillor Calvert. And seconded councillor Deeker. We look at that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll put that motion, all in favour?
Aye.
None against. Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for that report. Thank you. Very good discussion. Okay, and so now we're going to move to transport, the Queenstown Intermediate Patronage report. Which reports on our performance of public transport, bus and ferry and total mobility services for the third quarter of this financial year. And we've got Julian Phillips, Doug Rogers, Gavin, welcome. All of you. And a great report again, so over to you. It looks like it's going to be you, Doug, is that right?
Yes, I'll open this up and Julian will be, thank you. Madam Chair, I'll just go some key aspects of the report today. A direct comparison with the previous year showed that Queenstown's patronage on an annual basis is running at about 80%, 88% of patronage. Some gains were made, you will have seen in the reports you've been provided with the half price fare initiative. there was an initial rush of increased patronage and then it flattened away slightly, but Queenstown is still running very, very strongly. Big highlight for us is the ferry patronage has remained strong through local use, and that is a big potential for a commuter service across the lake, and we're investigating further with that. Dunedin patronage again around the same level, about 87% in comparison to the previous year, but 92% of pre-COVID. So again, gains were made there with half-price fares. Comparing nationally, I've been in contact with my colleagues around the country. We are one of the least impacted with missed trips and lower patronage than the rest of the country. Some have reduced their timetables to 60% of their full rate and are still experiencing 20 to 25% of cancellations on a daily basis. So our operators are doing a marvellous job, in my opinion, for getting us through as well as they can. So our recovery from these disruptions has been quite rapid. Now, that's probably about all I have to say for you. We're working with our operators to ensure we continue those gains. However, we are impacted by driver shortages, as you all know. When the borders closed, a lot of our drivers come from overseas, and concurrently, it was a bit of a perfect storm. The visa requirements changed, where the salaries were much higher than were being paid, so they couldn't get a visa to come back and to work with us. So that's being worked on, obviously, on the living wage initiatives as well. So we've got a few battles here to get through, but I think we're on the way in a positive direction. Now I'll hand you to Julian, who will get into the details with you.
Thank you. Hello, Julian.
Yeah, really just looking to answer any questions that the councillors have on the paper.
Hilary?
I'm just looking at page 58 and 59. And I'm thinking that they sort of don't quite reflect. I mean, I can see where they're going, but when it says measurements against annual KPIs and less than one complaint regarding punctuality, for example, and driver behaviour or whatever.
Yeah.
We've divided them off so as that complaints about punctuality, about timeliness, are separate for complaints about bus cancellations. That's a timeliness thing. I mean, it just hasn't arrived. It's sort of, that would usually.
Yeah, look, we introduced that as a new category to specifically measure prior to COVID and flu and driver shortages, whatever's causing the current issues. We'd be missing in some months zero trips at all. So all the complaints around the area were generally about, hey, the bus was 10 minutes late, half an hour late.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So the reason for putting that in, there's an argument to combine the two and have it as an overall figure. I can appreciate that. So you could look at it in its entirety.
I can appreciate that you want to know the separate things because they are sort of separate, but to think that something is less than it is because they've been shifted to another category sort of as the effect of. So if we could have them separate and then put together for the purposes of.
Yeah, so in the next paper we can combine them in one and just put a subline about the split.
And do we have, and this is a question I think I suggested in advance of this, when we don't have, do we check every bus? I mean, is this taken from the real-time data from the buses, the where they are and things?
So this is this table here is customer feedback. So it's complaints about missed trips, not the actual volume of missed trips.
Yes. So what about the actual? Do we? And when we say missed trips, do we include the trips that don't conform with the? I know our contracts say a version of you have missed this service if it's more than 2 minutes before, whatever it is.
Yeah. So
does those missed trips gap thing come from actually what the buses are doing, and do they include the out of time?
So a missed trip, this would include, if you're applying an abatement or something like that, is either a trip, it's as defined by contract, so it's either a trip that's missed in its entirety, which is a cancelled trip, or a trip that I can't remember the precise time is, but leaves the terminus later than 4 minutes 59 seconds. Even if it runs, it still counts as a missed trip.
And with the terminus, you mean
The start point of
the
the
other
route.
end, or do you include the bus hub? Is the bus hub a terminus for that purpose?
For the purposes of the report, the contracts, the terminus is the point it starts on the route. So if it started 5 minutes late and then caught up, it wouldn't really matter. It would still count as a missed trip.
Yeah, no, I mean, like the Opo bus comes from Shield Hill through to Opaho.
Yeah.
Through the bus hub, does it? Does the terminus include the bus hub? So if I'm waiting at the bus hub, is it officially late if it leaves the bus hub late?
No, not by contract. Whether in the new contracts, including forthcoming, bus hub is a timing point, so it would be measured. That being said, on our real-time data, we monitor at the start, middle, and end. So the bus hub being the middle and the Frankton interchange and Queenstown being the middle point there.
So it's a late, it's a missed trip if it's late at the bus from leaving the bus hub.
No, leaving the terminus, the start point on the route. So if it's late at the bus hub, so it leaves 5 minutes late at the bus hub, that would be counted as a missed trip.
So that's sort of we get to, because that's where people catch them from, isn't it? I mean, if they're catching the Opo bus, they're unlikely to be catching it, just as an example. From Shield Hill, they likely should. I suspect they often leave the terminus, the end point on time, but they often don't leave the bus on time. And so that's, I think, one of the differences between what we hear anecdotally and what we constantly hear complaint-wise and you hearing. And what's actually in these stats is that it's not from the end. By the end, they've got a wee chance to turn around or something, and they've got a chance to start on time. But the bus hubs where everyone catches it, you know, it's a town.
Yeah, I think it's a valid point, Councillor. Absolutely. I think we'll look at that.
Yeah. And presumably our contracts say the terminus or something, so that's a separate issue, but we can put something in. And the last question, I'm sorry to go on about this because buses is one of those things that people complain to us about. Does every time somebody rings and asks about a bus, is that notified as a complaint?
It wouldn't be a complaint if they're inquiring about something like, hey, where does this bus go from A to B? If they're calling and going, hey, I'm really angry with my bus was late. Where's the next one? That sort of thing. That would be a complaint, yeah.
Yeah, so a friend of mine rang the other day and said, I know, Michael, but that's what we get constantly.
I've got about 4 of those too.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can follow that up by email. We're out of time for this.
Well, I just didn't get it answered. So, but
make it very concise, please.
Yeah, and very small part of the question. She rings up and says, where is the bus? 2 of them haven't arrived. And she gets told, I can see the bus travelling, that's where it is. But that is actually a complaint. I mean, it might be a query about where the bus is, so it's answered with where the bus is, but it's actually a complaint. So I'm just wondering whether complaints are being, but we can follow that up.
I think we need to follow those things up. I've got a series of them too that are in the train at the moment.
Yeah, thank you.
So I've got Michael Deaker, Andrew Noon, Brian Scott.
Yeah, thanks. And thank you for this very good report. Doug, I wanted to go back to your introductory comments about how you've talked to colleagues nationally and how we, as contract providers, working very hard with our people, and our performance in terms of reliability, driver availability, and patronage are all looking better than other regions.
There's
generally, because that's not the impression that Otago people would get reading our regional newspaper, who seem to rejoice in highlighting what they see as something of a shambles. That really irritates me seriously. I've stopped subscribing to that particular paper, but I do read it online, and I keep seeing these stories. Is there any way, Doug, that you think we could possibly counteract the level of negative publicity that our bus services get?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of things we're working on at the moment, and it's not an aside, it's really strongly related. It's not so much about customer satisfaction, it's about their experience. It's the quality of the ride, it's the quality of their experience, their interaction with drivers. There's a whole lot of lenses on this that we need to really get some
And it's the
grip
stats
about.
as well.
Absolutely. The ODT print what the ODT prints.
Well, I
Really,
know
yeah.
that. Yeah, yeah.
And I think we possibly need to reflect on the information we give them, not necessarily pulling back, but to actually be quite clear about what we're saying. Yeah, I accept the perception is something we need to overcome, and we can only overcome that with good performance.
Yeah.
So that's the avenue we'll have to take.
Yeah.
And also I think, yeah, what we say and our messages need to be consistent and very, very strong about the necessity for this. So it's a very, very important part of what we're working on at the moment. I'm not sure I can change the perception of people at the ODT. We could even offer that a weekly column about buses. We could do, it's about us being quite visible as opposed to,
But those are letters to the editor, which you couldn't do anything about anyway today. Those are the ODT today, it's letters to the editor.
Could we, for example, offer that newspaper and other media for that matter too, a briefing by you and Julian, or others if you wish, but you two in particular, to give them what you've given us. Show them the stats, show them the trends, talk about your conversations with colleagues so that they are more aware, rather than the petty level of missed trips and all that sort of stuff that they seem to rejoice in. That strategically, this service provision is working better than most. And I think to invite them into the building and give them a half-hour briefing on what the facts are based on this report would be perhaps a useful way of overcoming the perceptions they have.
I think, yeah, I mean, a lot of people who are regular bus users and regular transport users, they would take little solace in the fact that we're outperforming somebody who's doing poorly.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly, when your bus doesn't turn up and you
At
go
the
to
other end of New Zealand.
exactly, yeah, one bus doesn't turn up, that's the perception. And one of the things we are working on at the moment is our app system, our digital communications with our passengers, as we're looking at upgrading that and even changing the way we operate as well. So we're just looking at the effectiveness of that, because like any piece of digital technology, it sometimes does not work as well. But there's also quite a proportion of our bus users that would not be cell phone users. They will not be computer literate. And so we have to use more avenues to get that messaging out. So we are reflecting on that at the moment and trying to get that way forward.
I was on the Oppo bus this morning and I think I did a count up, there were 20 passengers and every one of them was on their cell phone. I think you guys through transit, through the website and through Facebook are doing a stunningly good job.
Was the bus on
Everybody
time,
else.
Councillor?
Pardon?
Was the bus on time, Councillor?
It's absolutely spot on.
He's up near the terminus.
I live at the terminus and
I catch them from in
service is
town.
Utterly reliable. Utterly reliable.
Wonderful. Good to hear.
Okay, we're going to move on.
Thank
Andrew and then Brian.
So my question is the here and now rather than the last 11 months, but how close are we the trigger point in terms of having to go through rescheduling to the timetable, etc.?
Do you want to address where we are at the moment?
Yeah, what I'd say is we're reasonably close. It's something we're started looking at yesterday and today, based on 3 consecutive days worth of cancellations reaching a certain level. It's complex. If we move to any sort of reduced timetable, it makes services more reliable in theory because there's less of them running, but we need to look at schools, commuting times. We have 2 different operators. They don't always have exactly the same level of drivers away at the same time. So it's complex, but it's something we are looking at intently as a team at the moment.
Thank you for the update. Cheers.
Just to add to that, the original plan we presented, I think back in March, about a possible reduction. That's quite a sledgehammer approach to a problem that is not network wide. And so we are looking at something a little bit more nuanced, just to maintain service levels where we have high patronage and that sort of thing. So that's the team are working on that at the moment. So we're digging quite deep into our data to get a workable solution that's going to be not perfect, but a little bit more satisfactory than a 60% reduction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Scott and then Kevin Malcolm. We're not hearing you, Brian.
Apologies. Two quick questions. The Queenstown Ferry, I see patronage has gone up 14%. It seems to me council went out on a bit of a limb there with the Queenstown Ferry, but the local community is supporting it. Is it tracking where you expect it?
Probably slightly higher than we might expect in the circumstances, given the nature of the patronage in Queenstown and the customer type, which is often visitors from overseas. You'll notice the revenue isn't tracking in the same way, but there's a locals discount that gives, multi-trip discount if you're local. So there are reasons behind that. We've actually got the ferry operator doing a deep dive into the data to give us a bit more background as to what makes up that patronage, but it's looking good.
Cool. No, thank you. And let's keep an eye on that. And hopefully Queenstown, the overall picture improves. Dunedin buses, we get challenged that the bus patronage needs to have a quantum change. And, just looking at your data and all this type of thing, there's been some remarkable trials. We've had fare free, we've had the $2 fare. What other levers can we pull to achieve a quantum change? Or is the COVID thing just making it too hard at the moment because we're not doing justice to these fare changes?
I think you're right, COVID isn't doing us any favours, but the fact that our patronage is where it is, even with 3 months or so of COVID and flu and driver shortages and everything else, is an indication that some things are going right. We had a couple of bright spots. Mosgiel, the Unit 5 service, which is Mosgiel, Brighton, Green Island, had its highest ever patronage month last month.
Cool.
It's an increase of 20% compared to the previous year. Just although I didn't make this report, just this morning looking at Queenstown figures. I was up there last week and trying to do some surveys and couldn't actually get on the bus because it was so busy. And this weekend's patronage, granted it's Matariki weekend and a few more tourists there, but it's highest patronage across the Friday to Sunday for 3 years, I think. So there were some green shoots, but it's a difficult environment. Other levers include we presented reports before where we've looked at routes, individual routes, rather than at a unit level, which are groups of routes, and it's not especially surprising to see that routes that have a higher frequency tend to be more popular. The $2 fare, I just mentioned Mosgiel. Mosgil's is a fair drive away from Central City. So $2 or currently $1. Palmerston as well, including the weekend service we launched recently. Those areas that are further away from the centre of town, I think, are being affected by the level of the fares and the other factors, fuel, inflation, and so on.
Cool. And what other levers should we be pulling to make that quantum change?
Yeah, we've pulled the price lever, and I think we have to go down the quality of experience, but as well as we need to.
I thought we were saying the quality experience was good.
Yeah, it's an examination of customer experience, so we need to get that data. But I think reliability again is a key component to make sure people.
Reliability. Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
How do you get Brian to catch a bus?
How do we get to?
How do you get Brian to catch a bus?
You know the answer to that, Hilary. Go a bit further up the hill, but.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin Malcolm.
Thank you. It's amazing. In the old days, councillors used to get their footpaths tar sealed, and that's why they went on to councillors. But I see Councillor Deek has actually got a bus terminal put in his place, so he's done a tremendous job.
He won't let it come up the hill.
No, quite right. Hey, look, sorry, Doug, just Julian, Gavin, just schools. So we had this big storm earlier on when we took over all the school stuff. So how's that actually tracking now, and how's that fitting in with everything?
It's going very well. Julian's got some good detail on that.
Yeah, it's doing well. We interestingly we introduced some new services as part of the sort of changes we made in January, February, whenever it was, to Kings and Queens. The school themselves kept us up to date with what they were doing, and they actually contracted their own service as well subsequently. And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, stopped it again because our buses are filled up and doing a good job. Only issue with school services is just some of the new ones we've introduced are in that sort of southern area of Mosgiel, Green Island, where patronage is growing so high that we're putting duplicate buses on 2 at a time at each timing point to take the extra patronage. The King service we introduced, Kings and Queens, used to be 1 bus, full-size bus, now it's 2 at the same time. So we're taking a lot. We actually introduced, not in this paper, but at the request of Arrowtown Primary, we introduced very recently school service there in the afternoon, drops kids off at Queenstown Event Centre. Previously the bus didn't go there. That's pretty much full on a daily basis. Did another one, again, at the request came through our planning team, Mokatipu High School, a minor diversion to take kids a bit further out to Hanley's Farm, Jack's Point. Again, doing very well and well received. So school services are going well. We do have further flung areas where we continue to get requests. You know, can we go as far out of this Tarry Mouth, for example, and areas like that? It's difficult when we're dealing with 1 or 2 pupils and to service everywhere at the same time. But I think the services are doing well, the existing ones, yeah, and they've been well received by the schools and the passengers alike.
And look, that's superb. And what that just shows me is that the ability for your team to adapt to the stuff that gets thrown at you, and it's working very well. And you're obviously working very, strongly with those schools and those communities. So it's really good. The other one, and I'm a bit like Councillor Scott because the service doesn't quite get to Oamaru, but it goes to Palmerston. So how's the new weekends going? Is that you're getting some numbers yet?
Yeah, it's going well. I haven't got the numbers with me, but we'll present some numbers at the next meeting. We'll also agree to provide the community board with a monthly update on the actual patronage starting next month. So we'll do that as well. Look, it's going well. We actually had some very good coverage in the newspapers. In fact, I think it also made it onto stuff as well. There was a couple of articles. One chap, the cheapest fare in New Zealand, looking at 65 kilometres at $1. So it's going well. It's not perfect. There are other things. We've had liaison from a community groups in Palmerston and community board related to Warrington about the route's fairly straight. It dives into Wakawaiti, dives into Karatani. There are some other communities that have to walk the main road to get to it, and we are looking at how we might make those connections a little bit easier for them. But look, it's going well.
Thanks, Julian. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Gavin. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And we're going to put this report. I think it's you guys have you've really expressed well what's going on, and you've been clear with the issues, and we know what they are. Good luck moving on with them. Thank you. But I think you have our full support, and it's a really good report, which Andrew's going to move, and Gary will second. Michael, any discussion? Michael.
Rather than just note the report, Andrew, I wonder if we could include that the committee notes the report and asks the manager of public transport and the implementation lead to consider a media briefing on this report and the general position of public transport in Otago.
And to be added to the motion.
Have you got that? Liz? They're both happy with that. Would you like to put it up and so everyone can just see if they like to? Is that a thing to do? People know what they're voting on. Any other discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Just a caution on that, that we don't end up putting out a media briefing which just incenses people more than they're currently incensed about the buses that don't turn up at their bus stop. Why I say that is that it is tempting, and I think we've done a good job of avoiding the downturn as much, you know, and I think our people have been away very hard and they've done very well. If the media release that goes out says,
Wasn't the media release was suggesting it was a
oh,
briefing.
sorry, if we talk to the media and say, well, we're, you know, better than the ones in Northland or something, and that's not what people feel is relevant to them. So I'm just sort of suggesting caution in that we say we talk to them about the things that are likely to make them feel better about the issues they've got at the moment.
Please.
Actually, the briefing we had 6 months ago, or thereabouts, where we had other staff along from PT who explained what was going on behind the scenes, was really informative as an elected member. Perhaps Doug wasn't on. Doug may not have been on board at that stage, but can't quite remember. But anyway, I mean, that was brilliant. And I imagine that's the sort of information that you would be sharing to ensure that, you know, the correct messages around, you know, how we're looking at solving issues, etc. There's a lot of moving parts with PT.
Yeah, we did actually discuss the council, each one of them that's done to the councillors a while back. Yeah, we had a chat about that yesterday, so definitely something we'd be keen on exploring.
And we're not looking for a story here. We're looking for some form of understanding.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, I think that's yeah. I think it's worth doing. The real big problem is reliability, and that's the next one for us to solve. But clearly, you've solved a few on the way. So with that, we'll put that motion. Oh, are we right with that? Provided it's incomplete. I think it can stop at staff, can't it?
Yep.
So that's.
Yeah, they know what we're talking about.
Yep. But okay. Okay, put their motion. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? No, carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, team. Appreciate your ongoing commitment and work in the face of quite difficult circumstances.
Sort of like being the Minister of Health, isn't it?
Probably, yeah. And
Well,
that's us
transport
for this meeting.
is
I'm
like
sorry
health,
we've
isn't